Welcome to the debut of Sacred Justice, where we expose darkness through divine light and where true crime meets spiritual commentary. We're going to be uncovering not just what is happening. Hold on a second. I have to put this. And we're true crime. So this is my first time using Zoom and using YouTube in this way. So there might be a few little glitches here. And I need to make sure that I can let my esteemed guest in here. Hi, Tony.
Hey,
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
I'm doing well. Nice to meet you as well.
Well, I have to be honest with you. This is my debut of Sacred Justice, my first time meeting you, and it's my first time using Zoom on YouTube, and it's all working. So I'm really thrilled.
Well, I am too. I was a little bit nervous because the microphone wasn't acting the way I should. And we've got people mowing the lawn out there.
Oh,
They're not
yeah.
on our property. They're the next people over. But if there's noise, I usually my filters pick it up, but for some reason it's showing on OBS, it's showing something else. So
Not a problem. I can hear you just fine. Just want to
good.
do my little intro. I like to bring my guests in um, first rather than having you wait. And I don't know, is there a like a backstage with Zoom like there is on StreamYard, I wonder?
I think basically what you would just have to do would be leave them in the leave them in the room, sort of like where you brought me out. You just
Yeah.
have to bring me out when you're ready for me, and that would
Okay.
work.
Okay.
But I like the idea of being up front, so
I
it
do
works
too.
fine.
I do too. And I really want you to hear. So this is what my show is really about. And I just want to welcome anyone who is here. And if you're whether you're listening live or whether you're listening to the replay later, I'm going to be espousing the great esteemed lawyer that we have as my guest today. But first, I just want to welcome you to the debut of Sacred Justice, where we are exposing darkness through divine light and where true crime meets spiritual commentary. We're going to be covering not just what happened, but why it matters at a soul level. My name is Tara Blooms. I'm so excited that you're here, and this is Tony DeWitt. On Sacred Justice, we will be having stirring conversations with spiritual lawyers, regular lawyers, survivors, psychic detectives, and I'm going to be covering current cases like the Donald Addison case and Sandra Birchmore trial and so much more. But like many of you, Tony, yourself included, I have been captured by the Karen Reed case. And I've been ruminating about why this case took on such a large following and why it grabbed the attention of so many people. One reason, as we know, Karen Reed can be anyone. It can be your wife, it can be your sister, your aunt, it can be me, it can be anyone. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, ostensibly. And how many times has that happened to us? But upon further reflection, I believe her not guilty verdict holds a deeper universal meaning. It feels divine in a way. And I just want to explain for a moment. Spiritually speaking, justice means more than just fairness or legal correctness. It refers to a deep moral alignment with truth, with the capital T, with compassion, and with divine order. In many spiritual systems, justice reflects the will or the nature of the divine, God, the universe, or some higher moral law. Acting justly means living in alignment with that higher will. And when that justice isn't met, we feel completely out of sync and out of alignment with that higher self. It's something that affects us on a very deep level, I believe.
I
In
would agree.
Christianity, justice is a divine attribute, right? It's part of God's nature that's fair, that's merciful, that's righteous.
Right?
In Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, justice is tied to karma. That's that moral law of cause and effect. But spiritually,
Well,
justice isn't just about punishment, it's about restoration, it's about balance. So I definitely think all of this applies to the Karen Reed verdict. A society is where everyone is seen inherently as valuable and they're divine and equal or interconnected in a way. So on a soul level, many of us have been spiritually validated by her not guilty verdict, whether or not
I
we're
think
aware of
that's
it.
true.
Yeah.
I think
So,
that's absolutely true.
yeah.
When you're talking about the 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 Hindu issue there, I
Mhm.
was just thinking of what I call that instead of karma, I call it the law of circumnavigation
Mm.
because what goes around comes around.
Yes. Yeah.
So I believe very strongly in actual justice. St. Thomas Aquinas said that the nature of law was to do good and avoid evil.
Yes.
And there was there was a lot of evil just in the way the trial was conducted.
Mm.
And I do believe that that offends God. And I
Right.
think that you can look at it as having great lawyers, you could look at it as having great facts, but at the bottom line is it would not have happened
Yeah.
if it hadn't been for, you know, what God wanted to have happen.
I really truly believe that, and that's this case is what prompted me to start Sacred Justice, and I want to approach true crime stories, trials, whatnot, from a spiritual standpoint, and like my heading says, exposing darkness through divine light, and talking about the importance of this trial, because this was like the OJ trial of this century. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I, I think Adelson will be another trial that is
Uh,
very much like that. I've been working
yeah.
on the Rowell Valley case in Connecticut, and I see that one as generally a moral failure on the part of the parents to
Mm,
teach, you know, avoidance. When someone, causes a problem, you walk away from it. You don't engage.
right.
Um,
Yeah. Well,
I
I want to introduce you because no, we don't know, not everyone
oh,
may know who you are. You have a huge following on your YouTube channel, but I just want to introduce you. This is Tony DeWitt. Tony is a retired attorney at law. He's been airing his own coverage of this trial and many others on his YouTube channel, JD, A Lawyer Explains, where he covers legal topics and analyzes current trials. Tony is adept at explaining complex legal topics in a way that we can easily understand. I can attest to that. That's why I like to listen to him. You can find
thank
his
you.
link down below, so you can go to his YouTube channel and just subscribe, and listen to what Tony has to say because you've been doing this for a long time, and you're the perfect guest to
About
break
three
down this
years.
trial.
Yeah. That trial was, I think the thing that irritated me the most about the trial is that it should never have happened.
Right,
Not the first trial, not the second trial, because they never had any evidence of a collision.
right.
When the DNA people come to you and they say, well, we found John's DNA on one of those taillight pieces, but John rode in that car all the time. You can't tell when DNA gets put on something or how it gets on something. And other than that, there's absolutely nothing on the back of that car that would indicate that there was a collision.
Exactly.
Um, and then when you look at the photograph at 5 a.m. where the tail light's not busted, you look at the collision, and then you look at what that tail light looked like after it got to the Sally port,
Mm,
and you realize that the only way that happens is through human intervention.
exactly.
And that's exactly what I believe happened. I believe that they felt they needed to get more evidence to essentially convict. So rather than doing the right thing and going and getting that ring camera, which would have told them everything they needed to know,
And more.
they
Mhm.
didn't want to know.
Yeah.
They just threw the taillight pieces out. And the thing that I thought was stupid about that is that when you bust out a taillight, taillight pieces don't have wings. They don't just, flap around and run over and lay near a body in the snow. They fall off where you have the collision. There were no
Mm.
taillight pieces in the road, and there were no tire tracks in the yard. So is this, is it telekinesis that moved them over there? That's just crazy.
They'd
Should
they'd
never have
want they'd
happened.
want us to think so. That's part of the just part that wasn't just that had us railing and yelling at our computer screens or TV screens, however we were watching this trial, and
Mhm.
feeling so gaslit by some of these detectives who thought, yes, using a leaf blower and blowing away all the evidence is perfectly normal and it worked so well. I'm just going to do this every time I'm looking into a crime. It's almost offensive on a moral level
It
because
is.
I'm not a detective, but I think many of us today, we're all armchair detectives. We've watched enough Dateline shows and true crime shows that we kind of know the basics about securing a crime scene and canvassing a neighborhood, separating the witnesses in the home. The fact that they never went in to speak to Brian Albert blows my mind to this day. And the fact that he never came outside, even if he really was sleeping, which I don't believe it for a second, but even after he woke up, that he wouldn't run outside to discuss with his comrades and fellow police officers. It's very offensive.
Well, it is. And there's absolutely no way to explain that as normative because we all know how police officers act when one of them goes down. And
Right.
the way they act is everybody marshals up and goes and gets the bad guy. And
But they didn't in this
they
case.
certainly render aid first. So it never made sense from a logical point of view. It never made sense from a moral point of view.
Mhm.
And it never made sense to the jury, obviously, because the only thing they convicted her of was driving under the influence, as they should have. I am unwilling to excuse that behavior. I hope that Karen Reed has learned a lesson
Mm,
about, the value of staying sober, particularly if you drive. You know, my wife and I don't drink. Every now and then we'll have a beer when it's really hot in the summer, if I'm
mhm,
grilling steaks or something down here at the beach. But for the most part, we don't drink.
mm,
And if we do drink, we drink at home.
mm,
We go to the Mexican restaurant. There's a great little Mexican restaurant here called Pepitos. And Pepitos has really good food, but the thing that I think most people go there for are those big fishbowl margaritas. And I don't know how you enjoy your food if your, taste sensations are dulled by alcohol. But be that as it may, I just don't think it's wise ever to go even have one drink.
mhm,
One of the things I teach a part of the concealed carry course on the legal issues involved in self-defense.
mhm,
And one of the issues that I talk about is if you alter your perceptions because of alcohol and you perceive a threat that no normal person unimpaired would perceive,
mm.
you don't have a self-defense claim. What
Right,
you have is an involuntary manslaughter claim.
right.
And so I think that it's really important when you talk about justice and that sort of thing that you man up and take the penalty for what you did. And I
Sure.
think that's what she did. And I'm really proud of Hank Brennan. And I would never normally say that. But at the end of the day, he did the right thing and said, treat her like any other defendant. And that was exactly the right thing for him to do. I
Yes.
don't know if that was an attempt to salvage his reputation, which may be beyond repair, but I think that's what he was trying to do.
There was too many people watching. If he had tried to take that in a different direction, I think
Hmm.
that would have been really challenging for him and for Judge Canoni as well. It was not the just thing to do. He did the right thing,
Hmm.
and they convicted her with the DWI. We call it a DWI, OUI, I think they call it up there.
Hmm.
But you know what I do want to say, Tony, because everything you just said makes sense, and I do hope that that lesson was learned not only for Karen, but for many other people that might think twice, because if there was
Yes.
no alcohol involved, John O'Keefe would likely be alive today. And I
Yes.
do want to lead with the empathy that we all feel for the O'Keefe family and the
Sure.
loss they've all endured. Officer John O'Keefe seemed like such a kind and wonderful man. And our hearts do go out to all of those, who knew and loved him. We recognize that the O'Keefes do not believe that justice was served with this verdict. And we're going to discuss that with you, Tony. I know that you've talked about this so much on your show, but this trial has garnered so much attention nationally, internationally, and
Yes.
it's left parts of this world spellbound, really. So let's just put on our psychiatry hat for a second. Why do you think that the justice for Karen Reed was so important to those of us who believe in her innocence?
Well, you touched on it at the beginning because there but for the grace of God go I.
Mm,
You know, every every person who's looking at that has said, I've been in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we always talk about when we see people pulled over on the side of the road by the police, we always change lanes and go on past because, as my wife often says, it's only the innocent bystanders that ever get shot, you know?
Right.
So
Look legal.
we, we just drive on. But I think that's it. People have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's offensive to everybody can define, nobody can define justice. I'll put it that way. Nobody can define justice because there's too much moral relativism in the world.
Mm,
People don't look at justice from the standpoint of the divine. What they look at it from is, how does it affect me? And this is one of those things. This is how it affects me. The problem is that everybody can't define justice, but almost everyone has experienced and can define injustice. They
right.
know when people have been tarred and feathered for something they didn't do.
Mm.
And so, because of that, because it's happened to almost everyone, your brother goes in, eats the Oreos, and you get blamed for it. You know what injustice feels like.
Been there
And so,
before.
yeah.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where if you recognize the fact that this happens to people all the time and they can't afford somebody like Alan Jackson
Mm,
and Yannetti and Rob Alessi, they go down for it.
right.
One of the things I assume you've seen what happened in the Koberger case
Yes.
with him taking a
Took a
plea.
plea. Hmm.
And I think, first of all, I think that is a good thing because it took the death penalty off the table for him. I I understand that there are probably cases where the death penalty is a righteous punishment in terms of the crime, but I don't think it's ever right to take a human life if that life can be saved and if there can be some redemption. Now, I don't know
Hmm.
whether they can in his case or not, but I think we ought to try.
Mm,
And there are so many people who have been saved at the 11th hour by DNA that I
right.
just think it isn't worth the risk.
Yeah.
And if I sat on a jury and I was, to be death penalty qualified, you have to say, yes, I could, in the right circumstance, impose the death penalty.
Right.
Couldn't do that.
Yeah. I don't
I
know how I
absolutely
would
couldn't.
feel about that. I don't know. It's one of those things. I think I know what I would do, but I don't think I would know unless it was facing me. I don't know how I would
Hmm.
feel. That's a heavy burden. And I don't know how the families feel about him taking a plea. There's a lot of kerfuffle about that. I don't know if they
True.
believe justice will be served. I don't know if he really did it. I don't know enough about it. I actually really don't. I would be a perfect juror because I'm very impartial. I don't know if he did it or not. I haven't seen a lot of proof about it, but
It's a circumstantial case.
mm,
Um, the only real piece of physical evidence they have is that sheath with his DNA on it.
right.
And uh, that I think is important. But again, there are issues with how effective, how DNA is collected.
Transfer.
Unfortunately
Right.
for the state, all of the evidence tracks with that. All of the other stars align, so to speak, to make it look like a pretty strong circumstantial case.
Right.
And I think they probably would have convicted him. The job of the defense lawyer in a case like that is to keep your client alive.
Hmm.
So that's what they have to do. They have to keep their client alive.
Right.
And if that means making him take a plea, that's fine. The only thing that really bothers me is that apparently we're not going to get an answer as to why this happened.
Right.
He's going to allocute to having done it, but we're not going to have any reason as to what was going on in his mind that let him do it.
Well, that's what frustrates me about the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed story is that I don't know if we're ever going to know what happened to him. I think there are a lot of theories. I have my own theory. I don't think that people set out to ambush him and that they were really they're that bad that they wanted to kill him. I mean, what if Karen had walked in with him that night? That would have changed everything if that was
Mm-hmm.
their plan. I think an accident happened. I definitely think the dog attacked him. Maybe he started hitting the dog and they didn't like that, so they started hitting him. Who knows? Something happened. And then it
Mm-hmm.
was a cover up. That's what I think. I don't know if we'll ever know, but I'm curious from your standpoint, from your expertise and being a trial lawyer and all these other, you've done a lot of research too. You're a big researcher, I see.
Mhm.
What are some of the most egregious standouts from this trial in your professional opinion? And I know there's lots of them.
Well, the first is the judge keeping out the FBI agent who would have testified to how crime scenes are processed. She said, everybody understands how that. Well, I
Yeah.
don't think that's true.
Apparently the Massachusetts State Police don't understand it.
No kidding. Um, so I was really upset that she did that, and I thought that most of her rulings I thought were wrong.
Mhm.
I thought in a truly just court system, like maybe the Second Circuit, she would have been, even if she'd been convicted, that would have been overturned. But it would have had to have waited until we got to habeas relief
Mm.
because the appellate courts in Massachusetts are not very defendant friendly. Um, I would like to think they try to make the right decisions, but in this particular case, they gave Canoni, this big award from the Bar Association,
All that.
and I just don't see that as
Person of the year, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, I just don't see that as
It's-
something that happened out of the blue. That was after everybody started criticizing her for what she did in the first trial.
yeah, the
So
timing
then
of
the
the
Bar
trial.
Association rallied to her defense. That's the number one thing that I start with.
Mm.
And then the way she essentially handcuffed the defense at every turn.
Did.
And a lot of the questions that she sustained the objection to were not objectionable in any respect.
Mm.
The other thing that she did is she purposefully, I think, this is just my opinion, but she purposefully, I think, tried to limit the appealability of those rulings because she refused to allow the attorneys to state the legal basis for their objection.
Yeah, that was so odd. Is that a
It's never
Massachusetts
seen that.
thing? I think it's a Massachusetts thing that I'm wondering, like, you're objecting, but why are you objecting? What is the objection? Is it
Right.
hearsay? Is it already stated? Like, you were so accustomed to
Speculation.
hearing
Yeah.
speculation, right? There's so many that they could choose from, but we never really knew why people were objecting.
In the YSL case, they had a similar rule. The reason you do that is because lawyers like to speechify and they'll stand up and go, Your Honor, please, there's no basis for that. These stating facts that aren't true. And of course, the jury hears that and they go, Yeah, I haven't heard that yet. So it's very effective if you make objections in that manner.
Mm.
So normally in the YSL case, what they did was they limited them to the rule. So the attorney would go, Your Honor, 403, which is the relevance rule,
Mm.
or 803, which is like the expert witness rule. They would jump up and they'd cite the rule. And if the judge had any questions, there'd be a sidebar and he'd rule on the objection, or she in the latter part of that. And which I thought was, a very good way to keep them from making speaking objections. But in this case, not having any basis for what the objection is, she's speculating on what the objection is. So,
Like, even didn't she make objections herself?
yes,
Is that
yeah,
normal?
and
I've never, I've never
judges
seen a
can do
judge make.
that.
Oh, they can. Okay.
Yeah, judges have complete control of the courtroom in terms of what comes in before the jury. So if you start going down a road that's going to lead to inadmissible evidence, what you usually get is counsel approach,
Hmm.
and you go up, and the judge says, "Now, I know where you're going with this. That's already been ruled inadmissible." And what the attorney will say is, Your Honor, I'm just laying the foundation so that you can make a proper ruling.
Right.
And it's okay, but if you go too far, you're going to get a mistrial, and that's not going to be good for you. So you get up to you walk up to the brink, and then you go to a sidebar, and the judge says, Nope, it's still inadmissible. So you leave it alone, which in some respects actually works better for the trial lawyer than just immediately ruling, say, stop going down that road. What the lawyer could have done, obviously, is make a record outside the hearing of the jury. Your Honor, I need to make a record.
Hmm.
So they send the jury out, he makes his record, and then that's done. But if you do it the other way, where you do this in front of the jury, then the jury's always wondering, well, what would that guy have said?
Yeah.
And so, you know, there there are a lot of things that happen in a trial that are strategic and tactical, and that people who are sitting in the jury box likely don't understand what's going on. Well, I always say that cross-examination is not the witness testifying.
Mm,
It's the lawyer testifying through the witness. He's
right.
like doing the marionette thing,
Hmm.
moving his lips. And because when you say, you were at the party, right? Yes. And you understood that there was going to be a fight, didn't you? Yes. And you didn't leave, did you? No.
Objection leading.
Yeah. Well, see, that's on cross-examination. Leading is actually preferred.
Okay.
And in the direct examination, that's where you get into the leading issue.
Mm,
And apparently in Connecticut, they have a weird rule about leading because a lot of the questions on both sides were leading, I thought. Judge never interrupted
okay.
anybody, and the other guy didn't object. So that's what we in the trial profession we call that a lawyer who's letting them try their case, which
Right.
is which is good in many respects, not necessarily right on the money with regard to the rules of evidence, but if the other guy doesn't object, it's not the judge's job necessarily to stop it from coming in, although it is permissible for the judge to stop it from coming in.
Well,
So,
she certainly
fine
did a lot of
line.
that. Yeah, I know. I'm so
Yes.
curious. I haven't heard from the jurors, the four that I've heard speak, say anything about the amount of sidebars that there were. I'm from New Hampshire, so I can get that accent down pretty good. All my relatives are from the North Shore of Boston, so there were a lot of sidebars, and I was getting aggravated by them. So I can only imagine the jurors, because I really feel like the way that she ran her courtroom, starting at 9, sometimes 10 or 11, and finishing always by 4, sometimes taking days off. This trial could have been severely condensed into
Hmm.
rather 8 weeks or 9 weeks down to like 3 or 4.
Yes, it could have been.
Yeah.
And the other thing that she could have done is put them on the clock. Prosecution, you have the burden of proof. You have, uh, let's see, what would be 8 hours a day. So you have 48 hours of evidence to put on. I'm going to keep a clock.
Mm,
And defense, you have 48 hours to put on your case. And that focuses them on the key issues. One of my big objections in this Connecticut case is, you know, who all did you go to high school with? Did you
yeah.
play in the band? Did you
Right.
did you play football?
Mm,
Stuff like that. I mean, it humanizes the witness for the jury, but honest to goodness, it's not relevant. Move on.
right. Get down to the point so that we can start making decisions about this. What did you think about the defense attorneys in this case? I thought Alan Jackson, I thought all of them were amazingly patient with the
Hmm.
judge. I cannot believe none of them seemed to get outwardly frustrated with her, even though it was very heavily tilted toward the Commonwealth. I mean, it really was. You couldn't watch this trial, Tony, and not think
Hmm.
that the judge was on the Commonwealth side and wanted them to convict Karen Reed because of just her actions. And the defense
Yeah,
attorneys didn't seem to react to that. What did you think of that?
I thought that was the appropriate approach because if you react to it, then somebody on the jury is going to say, methinks he doth protest too much.
Hmm.
And it's also possible to get sanctioned for that. You know, if you do it at a sidebar, judge, you're not being fair, right? The jury doesn't hear that. The judge is going to say, I am being fair, and I don't appreciate that. And that's the end of the discussion. But if you do it in front of the jury, that's when she sends the jury out and she rebukes you. Did you happen to see the Rittenhouse trial?
I did not.
Okay. Kyle Rittenhouse it was a self-defense case from
Mhm.
Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the prosecutor went over the line in that case. And the judge just very calmly sent the jury out, and then he read that man the riot act.
Mm.
Um, if you if you go on YouTube, you can find the video clip of him
Oh,
reading
cool.
Mr. Binger is the guy's name, reading him the riot act, and he made a lot of good points.
Mm.
That trial was actually run the best way I've ever seen. It was very fair. right down the middle.
Sounds like
He didn't let the
like a
defense,
tight
yeah,
courtroom.
yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't let the defense get away with anything, and he didn't let the prosecution get away with anything,
Mm,
which is how it should be.
yeah.
And here, I mean, this is hyperbole, but I think the prosecution should have come in with a shotgun and shot Karen Reed, and the judge would have said, "Well, that was a
I'll
little
allow
over the
that.
top."
I'll
Yeah,
allow
I'll
it.
allow that. That's another thing. I've never seen a judge that took that imperious approach to objections. I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. Can you answer
Oh,
that question?
thank you.
Yeah, that's just, see, all of this stuff speaks to that inner truth inside of us and that
Hmm.
inner justice that I believe is like a current that drives us, whether, again, we know it or not, that makes us feel like we want to scream and yell. Because what if that were me or you or your wife or your daughter or someone that we knew? Karen Reed was anybody. And
Hmm.
I really can see, and I'm wondering, I have a feeling I know the answer to this question, but I want you to tell me. I kind of see a parallel of what went on in this trial. We witnessed two sides in this trial, the free Karen Reed side, who believe in her complete innocence, and then the anti Karen Reed side. And it's
Hmm.
not unlike recent politics, Tony,
Hmm.
that are embedded in our society today. You know, we just can't see
Hmm.
eye to eye on the subject with certain people. And I find that fascinating. Here we have one side that is adhering to facts and science, and not to mention common sense, which I think does have a factor in all this. It does serve a place. And the other side is ostensibly attached to emotions, speculation, and refuses to see the facts presented to them. And so neither side can see the other's perspective. And that's why I'm wondering, will John O'Keefe ever get justice? Because I don't know if his family or the people on the John O'Keefe side, the anti-Karen Reed side, are ever going to see things the way that we do. What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
here's what I'd say about that. There is no way for them to get criminal justice at this point. And the reason is because let's say that the guy across the street actually saved a copy of the Ring video and it shows two people, Mr. A and Mr. B, who carried the body out there, right? And you can see him clear enough that you know who it is. And now there's a criminal charge brought. The defense is, look, this isn't what the state believed before. The state before believed it was Karen Reed, and we've got all this evidence against Karen Reed. And they would simply put on all of the Karen Reed evidence, and that would probably be enough to establish reasonable doubt
Mm.
because the motto would be, videos can be altered. I mean, videos were altered in the Karen Reed case,
Exhibit A.
but
Yeah.
you make the argument if you're the defense attorney that this was the video doesn't prove the whole thing. And that I think is the main objection to trying anybody else for this crime, even if they develop some good leads and good evidence. The state already sort of unloaded its gun on Karen Reed, and now the person can stand up and say, you know, they couldn't convict Karen Reed because she was innocent, and they're not going to be able to convict me because I'm innocent. And they'll never get justice. And of course, the major reason they won't get justice is because the Keystone Cops did the investigation.
Yeah.
There's a great commercial from, I don't know, it's probably 40 years ago. My recollection is it was filmed in black and white, so that ought to tell you something.
I'll
I saw
probably
it in
remember it. What is
I
it?
probably saw it in the 60s, but it was a commercial for a company called Amco, and Amco does transmission work on cars.
Mhm.
And the point of the ad was that you should trust your car to somebody who does transmission work, not just to the guy down at the gas station. And so they had this guy that looked a lot like the fellow who played Goober on Mayberry RFD,
Mhm.
and he was trying to work a garden hose, and he couldn't work the garden hose sprayer, and he's saying, "Let me try, boss. I always wanted to fix a transmission." And that's sort of what you're at here with these cops. It's like, let me try. I've always wanted to work a leaf blower in the snow.
Oh my God. But how do you think that occurred? How, because I don't think the cops were in on it. I don't think there was some big conspiracy, but how did the cops fall in line and actually step out of protocol. That is not how you secure. They didn't secure a crime scene. I mean, we can go on and on. There was no taillight there the night that they found John that morning. Every time
No.
a cop went by 34 Fairview, miraculously they would see a piece of red taillight on the ground. Never recorded it, never took a picture of it, never GPS coordinated it. I mean, really, really unbelievable. So how did these cops decide, you know what, we're just not going to do things the way that they're normally done?
The reason they did that is because Brian Albert was a cop.
Yeah.
Look, we don't know for sure what happened here, but there's a possibility our guy here was involved. And so and of course, Karen made it easy for them because she panicked and she, with a little help from Jennifer McCabe, she tried to convince herself that she'd hit him
Mm-hmm.
when she clearly didn't. You can understand how she might have that thought, but again, she made it a little easier for him, and they're like, "Hey, I think there was a conspiracy with the people who are on that group chat,
Yeah, for sure.
but I don't think there was a conspiracy any wider than that." In the interview with ABC, Brian Albert said, "Well, you'd need 30 people in this conspiracy." No,
Yeah.
all you need is the people in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And the goodwill that they had generated over the years with people like Trooper Proctor and with Yuri Buchanan, all of those folks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another thing I think that, getting back to your original question about the justice part of this, another thing that really resonated with me that I think absolutely cooked the case of the state was where Buchanan said, yes, the investigation was conducted with honor and integrity.
Unbelievable.
You know, integrity is based on values. You have values that, honor, kindness, dignity, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to integrate those values with your actions. So that's the definition of integrity that I use. And none of those values showed up in this investigation. And how he can truthfully say that there was honor and integrity, I think that lost the jury right there.
No question about it. And he lost all respect for sure. But that's that was the line of defense from all of these cops. Even Proctor came out. You probably saw the interview, and he said, "No, I wouldn't do anything differently. Maybe I'd maybe I'd check another vehicle just to make it look like I did it or something." And to say that you wouldn't, to not self-reflect and look back
Mm-hmm.
on such an egregious way to not secure a crime scene and all the mistakes that they made, to not want to correct that in the name of justice, especially considering their side didn't win. You'd think he'd want to change something. You'd think he'd want to go back and, tighten things up a little bit. That was really astounding to hear. And that's the part that blows my mind when it comes to the other side, that they're not questioning, why did Brian Albert not come out? Why did the cops use red solo cups? Why didn't this crime scene get secured? They're not asking any of these questions, so they can't see what we're seeing. And I don't think there's a way that we can get them to. And I'm not even going to try, because I think it's futile. For example, look at Welcher's experiment, with the blue paint. It's so clear
Mm-hmm.
to us that he leaned into it so that he would get the marks that he wanted on his arm. But
Mm-hmm.
the other side don't see it in the same way. What do you make of that?
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the O'Keefe family goes, and again, my heart goes out to them. But as far as the O'Keefe family goes, they were sold on this case at the beginning. They didn't like Karen to begin with, and that is in the nature of toxic relationships. And there was a little toxicity in their relationship apparently.
Hmm.
Um, and so they didn't like her, and it made perfect sense to them that she ought to be in trouble for this. And as a result, with cognitive dissonance, you stop looking at anything that conflicts with your view of the evidence,
Right.
or with what you think the evidence ought to show or
Yes.
believe. And I think and in confirmation bias, and
Yeah.
certainly with regard to the prosecutors, there was confirmation bias.
I think we have confirmation bias too. I mean, we can be
We
guilty
do.
on both sides. Yeah, for sure. I think that's fair. What would you do if you had a client that you were defending, in this case, say like a Karen Reed, or I'm sorry, if you were prosecuting, and your medical examiner could not say the one thing that you want her or him to say, which is that this person died from a collision and that person hit him. What would you do with that?
The only ethical thing you can do at that point is dismiss the case.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the only ethical thing you can do.
Yeah.
You can't, your job as a prosecutor is not to get a conviction. Your job is to do justice. And you can't do justice by doing injustice. And that
Right.
ought to be, fairly obvious to anybody. But that is unfortunately the approach that they took.
Yeah, it really is. I would say for me, and I want to hear what your take is as well. Um, the dog was so important to me. I'm an animal lover. I have a dog. That dog was such a crucial part of this whole thing because where the heck was Chloe? Where was she that night? She was no longer there after she attacked John and whatever happened after
He
that.
was gone.
Someone
Mhm.
removed the dog from the home, which is why Jen McCabe didn't see it. No one at the party saw it. No one can say where Chloe was. And that's a really big hole that was left for me. Like, you don't have to go much further beyond that. Where is the dog that was known for attacking people? That was so massive. And then to get rid of your 7-year-old, 6-year-old dog, your family dog, is not something that people do. It's just not. So that for me was massive. And the fact that, so I always use this example. I have a sister. If a friend of mine called me and said, "Oh my God, my boyfriend, I can't find him," I get in a car with her and we go look. We drive to my sister's home in a blizzard, and he's found on my sister's lawn. And my sister doesn't answer her phone twice. If you don't think I'm going to batter ram my way into that house to make sure my sister's alive and well, and the fact that Jen McCabe did not go to her own sister's home to A, find out if she was okay, and B, to see if maybe Brian could help or get blankets to warm John up, is you
Mhm.
don't have to go any further as well. That was so egregious in my opinion. What stood out for you in terms of the case?
The other big issue for me was the supposed mistake about the cuts in the back of the hoodie.
Mm,
Where Brennan was asking him about, didn't you see these cuts back here? Lally and the female prosecutor, Lally had intentionally offered that in the first trial. He had affirmatively stated to the witness, "You made these cuts in the back of this, right? Yeah, that didn't happen." And so he knew it. And instead of getting up and saying, "Your Honor, may I have a moment?" and going
mm,
and talking to Brennan and keep him from sticking his foot in his mouth, if indeed that's what he was doing,
mm.
that was a big red flag to me, which to me indicated that frankly, that Brennan was just trying to throw a Hail Mary at the end, and instead he threw an interception.
But the defense didn't object, and I find that really interesting because clearly they knew that
Well,
those cuts were caused by their witness, didn't they?
I think they did. But they let him go on ahead and get that in because they thought maybe they could get a mistrial. Only I don't think they really thought they could get a mistrial. I thought they were just preserving error in the event
Mm,
that they lost. But Alessi was able to get up and show the sweatshirt, so that was good.
yeah.
There's just so many things like that. I think toward the end, he was just grasping at straws. And
Oh,
when he
yeah.
went up against La Posada, and La Posada just bodied him with
That's great. Well, the car
no,
didn't, so he wasn't hit by a car, so it doesn't really matter. Something
yeah,
to that effect.
exactly. Uh, you don't see too many trials with Perry Mason moments.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of Perry Mason moments in that trial. And I think that's good for everybody. What kind of dog do you have?
He's a cockapoo. He's a Cavy cockapoo. So he's Cocker Spaniel Poodle and King Charles Cavalier. It's the greatest thing I've
Oh,
ever done was get a dog, Tony. My friend bred her dog with another one last year, and they gave me first pick of the litter, and and I've had dogs, when I was younger, and I've had cats my whole life. I'm an animal lover. So
mhm.
I can't imagine rehoming my dog. And how about if your dog attacks someone else? Most of the time your dog is going to get put down, unfortunately. That's what
Mhm.
happens. If your dog is a danger to society, you don't just shift it to another state and hope that it doesn't attack anyone else there. If that dog hurt a child, forget it. So
Hmm.
I don't think Chloe is with us any longer. I don't know if they killed her that night. I don't know if they took her out back. I don't know, just to get rid of the evidence. Um, I didn't watch the first trial, and I
I
don't
didn't
know
either.
why it didn't capture. You didn't either. Oh,
Mm.
interesting. So, the whole Sally Port video was so egregious. The fact that they try to slide that in as a reverse. So right then
Hmm.
and there, I mean, how can you trust the Commonwealth? And then what they tried to play with this hoodie situation, it just that's when they really started losing steam. Couldn't you feel that they knew that they lost? Didn't you feel like the energy kind of drain out of Brennan toward the end?
Yeah, it did. It did.
I think
Um,
he knew.
and they gave him a soup sandwich to begin with because there was no way for him to hold everything that he needed to hold together to get a conviction in this case. And so when you can't win fairly, sometimes you cheat. And unfortunately, the law is not always good about stopping people from doing that.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, to blame in many respects for what happened.
Well, I
Um,
certainly hope that the feds are going to be getting involved. There was a really great interview on Justice Served with a wonderful woman, a former FBI agent. She was great. I just loved her commentary. I just joined her Patreon. Her name is Jodine Weber. And she was like, oh, Brennan can say that the feds have closed the case, but the feds can close the case this morning at 8:30 and we can reopen it again at 4 if we want to. Nothing
mhm.
is solid. So she's not convinced that the federal charges won't be coming. Some people are saying that Higgins could be flipping. That is one way that we could get justice is if someone told the truth. If one of those core people that knows what really happened does flip and comes out and tells the truth.
Mhm.
That's something that, when we consider the importance of justice in our world, which is the foundation of our society, it is my prayer for the O'Keefe family to see the truth, in front of
Mhm.
them and for justice to be truly served by arresting the rightful people who did this. And I do pray that the feds are going to keep putting pressure on the people who are responsible.
Yeah.
That's my prayer
The
for them.
reason I ask about your dog, have you ever heard of the monks of Newskeet?
I haven't.
I forget whether they're in Vermont or New Hampshire, but they are an order of monks. And what they do to support themselves is they raise German shepherds and they train them.
Mm.
And every night when they sit down for their evening meal, all the way around the table, you see those German shepherds sitting there just being good as gold. And they've got a kind of a sort of a patented method that they use to train the dogs. I have uh, a Chihuahua Yorkie, a Chorkie, and a Schnauzer Yorkie, Schnorky, and we've
Snorky and a
had them.
turkey.
Yeah, we've had them for 13 years, and my Schnorky is getting a little old. She hurt her back jumping down from the couch, so we have to put her in a brace, and
Aw, bless.
and she's just a sweet dog. And the other one, we found Emmy, the Chorky. We found her on a 106-degree day in Jefferson City, Missouri.
Mm.
Somebody had thrown her out at the mall, and she was dodging in between
Oh
cars.
gosh.
And I said, "Is that
Unbelievable.
dog tied to that bumper?" And my wife yelled, "Stop!" And I
What?
stopped the car, and she jumped out and she picked that dog up. And Emmy immediately put her head on my wife's shoulder. And I said, "Well, that dog's going home with me."
Oh yeah.
And
You've
it did.
earned. Oh, that's such a sweet story. That is your dog, yours and
Oh
your
yeah,
wife's.
she's definitely she's just special.
Yeah.
At the time we had an American Eskimo named Pearl, and the she was quite old at that point, and we didn't really want to get another dog because we're getting a little older. I'm 69, my wife's 65,
Hmm.
and I just didn't want to. I don't want to be unfair to a dog.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so we were thinking about maybe not doing that. And then that dog just kind of wound up in our lap. And
No,
so we've had
wasn't
her for quite a while.
it wasn't time for you to not have a dog. So you understand the importance of And just the idea of getting rid of your dog. Now, I know that for some reasons people do have to rehome their dogs for all kinds of different
Mm-hmm.
reasons. That wasn't what happened here.
Mm-mm.
I know that to be true on an innate level. I don't know what
Mm.
happened, but I'm sorry that that poor dog had to have been brought into all of this, as I am John O'Keefe. Um, so
No bad dogs, only bad owners.
I know it's so true. I really believe that. I mean, I trust me. I won't even tell. I have a very bad animal story, and I don't like them, and it's my own, unfortunately. So I will not even tell it because I don't know if I can say it without crying. So, I totally
Well,
agree
then
with you there.
don't. Yeah.
Um, so on this show, I'm so happy that you joined me because I
I'm
have been
happy you asked
watching
me.
you. Yeah, it's been really great. I don't want to be part of so many wonderful people have been covering Karen Reed, including yourself, and so many good people that I've been listening to, a lot of good lawyers that have a lot of insight. So my show is going to be just a lot different. It's going to be covering, it's kind of weird to think about bringing spirituality in with crime, but I think now is a good time. Um, I just last night I
I
was
would agree.
conversing with Lori Vallow's brother and her uncle through their live chat, and they helped me. I was naming this Sacred Valley Justice, and just this morning I changed it because of my interaction with Rex and with Adam. So they're going to be coming on my show. I'm going to be emailing them as soon as I get off of here. And I want to talk about family unity and I mean talk about people that have been placed. I don't know any other group of family who are in a position that these folks are in to have a sister convicted of 4 different murders and other things. I mean, it's really, I can't think of another defendant. Can you? That can be placed in the category of Lori Vallow?
No, no, I can't. And you know,
Murdaugh,
I
maybe kind of close, but
close, yeah.
yeah.
I look at, you know, I believe very strongly that you should have a grounding in some some form of religion. I believe in Christianity. That's what I do, but I believe it's really important to have that in your life, to have that belief that there is a higher power that if you don't follow the rules, you will be punished, and that's the punishment that counts.
Mm,
Um, and yet you see so many of these preachers who are just in it for the money and who don't stay true to a biblical message and
yeah.
who tell people, you can have God will get you anything you want. All you got to do is send me money and God will get you anything you want. I I think that that's kind of the thing, sort of the thing that happened here. She got into this cult-like behavior with Charles Vallow, and
Oh
the
yeah.
two of them just sort of invented their own religion,
Oh,
and
and she's
it,
still deep in it. I watched her interview with Nate the other night. She's deep in it.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
she is.
fascinating. It's fascinating. But so I'm a firm believer, Tony, of when things happen, I'm always searching for the reason why. And I'm old enough to know I've been in dark, deep valleys. I call them sacred valleys. And when we're in one, I've just come out of one. That's where the richness of life comes from. That's where I learn the most. They're not any fun and I don't like going through them. But then I want to come out and I want to shed light on certain things. And that's what this show is going to be about. So I'm hoping that if if Adam and Rex do come on, we're going to be talking about um, the division in families. They're really passionate about that because their family has been divided. Now, some of us will be able to relate because a lot of other families are divided not for the same reason, but there's going to be some commonality there. And of course, we'll be discussing anything else that has to do with Lori and whatnot, but that will probably be my next guest. So really excited to have you on my debut show. It's been really enlightening. We could talk about this show forever. We're going to be
We
citing
could.
these things. I don't think it's over. I don't think this saga is over yet. I'm praying that it's not.
I hope
Um,
not.
in essence, spiritual justice is love applied with truth. It's about aligning ourselves with the deeper sacred reality that all beings are worthy of dignity, of compassion, and of fairness. That includes Karen, it includes John O'Keefe, especially. So, this justice is crucial because it does ensure the fairness and it protects our fundamental rights and it promotes social harmony. Um, it facilitates so many different things developmentally. So, I want to thank you, Tony, for being here. And I want to thank everyone for joining me if you're here live or if you're here on the replay. Let us know in the comments if there's any questions that you have, or please go to Tony's YouTube. I do have it here in the link. But also let me know if there's any cases that you want me to cover. I am I'm thinking about covering a cold case up here where I live in New Hampshire right now. It's a woman who was murdered a long time ago in '09, and they have no idea who did it. And it was only a few miles from where I am. So I'm thinking about maybe putting on my detective hat and just maybe going to talk to the cops and just seeing if I can shed light on it, just to see if maybe we can get some justice for this woman and her family. So you can stay tuned for that.
I'll do that. Now I'm gonna have to get off. I'm gonna have to go subscribe.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tony, for
So,
being here. It was my pleasure. And thank you all for joining me here on Sacred Justice. My name is Tara Blooms, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very
all
much.
right.
Bye-bye.
And everybody who is listening, make sure you go and subscribe to Tara's podcast because you will be richly rewarded, I think, with good content. Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Tony. Take care now.
Mhm.